Have you ever had a brief encounter with a stranger that completely transformed your day? Maybe it was that security guard that you've passed like 100 times without really seeing, or a waiter that makes your dining experience unforgettable, or just a random person who inspires you with a simple act of kindness. So these fleeting connections, they're not just pleasant social exchanges. They're really powerful events that can regulate your nervous system and create moments of genuine human connection in a society that is increasingly isolated. So today I'm going to show you how brief connections with strangers can actually rewire your brain and improve your well-being. Welcome to the Building Resilience Podcast, episode 227, The Truth About Strangers. Welcome to Building Resilience, a podcast where theory, practical strategies, and inspiring stories show you how to unlock your best life. I'm your host, Leah Davidson. As a certified life coach, speech-language pathologist, and nervous system resilience expert, it is my mission to teach you how to be more resilient to life's adversities. I will show you how to manage your mind, befriend your nervous system, process your emotions, and even eliminate stress. It's time to do more than just survive. It's time to thrive. Let's get started. So I've actually spent the majority of my career working in the area of communication, and I can see firsthand the importance of connection, not just with our close family and friends, but seeing how small interactions can have profound effects on our nervous system. And right now, I'm again witnessing the profound power of connection. If you haven't done so already, I want to invite you to check out my Nervous System Journaling Club because I'm truly excited how this community is coming together. We're having fun journaling and doodling, and most importantly, connecting. And many of the people are strangers, but it's amazing how quickly people can become connected and feel supported. So come on over and join us. The link is in the show notes. Now, in today's episode, I'm talking about strangers and how they can be an important part of regulating your nervous system. We're going to look at three aspects of stranger connection. First, why does your nervous system crave these interactions? Secondly, how can strangers actually help you co-regulate? And finally, what are some practical ways to create these meaningful moments in your daily life? So firstly, let's talk about why the nervous system has a need for connection. Think about one of the first things that you say when you catch the eye of a stranger, or maybe the things that you could say, because many of us say nothing. But maybe after today, you'll be inspired to say something like, "Hey, how are you?" or "It's a beautiful day." Now, it may seem meaningless on the surface, but these simple exchanges actually serve a purpose. While when I casually say, "How are you?" to somebody, I'm not expecting them to launch into how they really are, but these exchanges are about social meaning. What I'm actually saying is, "I see you. You exist. We share this space." You see, way back when, we evolved in tight-knit communities where social connection was necessary for survival. Remember, your brain is constantly scanning the environment, asking that important question, am I safe? And of course, this is not done consciously, but we're looking for safety on a subconscious level. This is a process that we call neuroception, and I did an episode about that way back at episode 125, so you can go check that out. But neuroception is what happens below conscious awareness. It's your nervous system's threat detection system. And when we interact with strangers in a positive way, our brain receives signals that the environment is safe. And so this does help us get into a regulated state, that zone of resilience, where we feel more calm and connected and regulated. Now, I want to tell you a quick story about my grandmother. My grandmother was born in a very small town called Lübeck, just outside of Hamburg, Germany. Now, she came from a well-to-do family, sort of upper middle class. Her father died, unfortunately, when she was 16 years old, leaving my great-grandmother alone raising two daughters. My grandmother always told us really fond stories about life in Lübeck. She was loved and cared for, and life was good. Now, she wanted to be a teacher, and so she set off for Tübingen University, just south of Stuttgart. There, she met my grandfather, and within 6 weeks' time, they pledged their undying love and decided that they would get married as soon as possible. But there was one problem. It was back in the 30s, and the Nazis were gaining traction, and my grandmother was half Jewish. It was shortly after they decided they wanted to marry that Hitler gained more power, and it became illegal for marriages between Jews and Germans to occur. So it was a very, very dark time for them, a dark time for everybody. Pressure was mounting all around. The Nuremberg laws were proclaimed, and all Jews had been deprived of their citizenship. So they lost many friends who were just afraid to associate with them or who were simply Nazis themselves. Now, my grandfather was a theology student in Berlin. My grandparents became very active in the Confessing Church, which was the Christian against Nazi church. Incidentally, if you've ever heard of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, he was a German Lutheran pastor who was a key founding member of the Confessing Church. And my grandfather was one of his theology students. Now, with the political situation become increasingly dire, my grandfather jumped at the opportunity afforded to him to go work with a pastor in London. This was an opportunity that was afforded to him by his relationship with Bonhoeffer. But this, of course, meant leaving everything and everyone. But with my grandmother being half Jewish, the writing was on the wall. They needed to leave their homeland of Germany. So my grandfather went over to London first. My grandmother stayed behind and began running some secret errands for the Confessing Church, bringing papers she would receive from London and was to deliver to Berlin. Now, one day, she was on a train heading to Berlin carrying some secret documents, and the officers of the secret police asked to see her passport. They looked at it, they looked at her, and asked her why she had not registered with the German embassy, and they took her passport. But right at that same moment, there was a large disturbance in the compartment next door, and the officer said he would be right back. Now, my grandmother recalls being scared stiff. She was alone in her travels, except there happened to be one woman, a stranger, who was sitting in the compartment with her. Now, clearly sensing that my grandmother was in deep trouble, the woman looked at her with kindness and calmness and advised my grandmother to just smile broadly at the officer when he returned. She was trying to help my grandmother in what she knew must have been a terrifying few moments. My grandmother took, I would imagine, some calming breaths, prepared to smile and flirt and remain calm and relaxed. So the story goes that a few minutes later, the officer comes back. She went into action. She smiled broadly. She remained calm. He quickly handed her back her passport and scurried back to the compartment next door where there seemed to be something a lot more pressing. Now, shortly after that story, she did end up boarding a boat in Hamburg, heading to London, and the rest is history. Now, I think of my grandmother in that train compartment, scared out of her mind. And I think of that woman who was in the compartment with her, a complete stranger. And I wonder if she realized what she was doing. Simply her presence, her energy, her calmness, and that reassuring voice helping my grandmother to stay anchored. This is an example of how a small interaction between strangers can make a tremendous difference because what she was offering to my grandmother was really co-regulation. And I imagine that co-regulation really helped my young, scared grandmother have the courage and ability to regulate herself. You see, we really do have a biological need to connect. We're constantly on a quest to feel safe in our own bodies, in our relationships, and in our environment. And co regulation is the connection that we make with others on a conscious and unconscious level. It's how we help share our calm and make space for somebody else's emotions, helping somebody else find safety. Co-regulation comes before self-regulation and is actually how we learn to self-regulate. And regulation is the essence of resilience, our ability to expand and contract, to leave home and find our way home again. And it's a function of our nervous system. So an interaction between strangers can totally shift and influence your nervous system for the good and for the quote unquote bad. The opposite can be true too. Many of us can walk through a public space with our nervous system in a slightly defensive mode, and then we can treat everybody as an unknown potential threat. This, though, actually keeps us in a mild but chronic state of activation, and that can take a toll on our physical and mental health. And of course, we also know that we can walk into a room and we can pick up on the vibes of other people's nervous systems. And if they're in a defensive mode, we can sense that as well. So, co regulation goes both ways. It can help you feel more safe, or it can place you in more of a dysregulated state. Let me share with you another experience to talk about the importance of co regulation through stranger interactions. And this is a more recent experience with a stranger. Now, my husband and I, we were away and we visited a new restaurant. We had this amazing experience with our waiter, and not just because he was efficient, but because he had an amazing ability to connect. So let me share what made it such a good experience. We arrived and he was friendly. He shared with us the specials, but it was kind of the way he communicated with us. First of all, he got down to our level and he maintained genuine eye contact that really communicated interest to us. He had a cadence with this speech. It was kind of slow and measured. That automatically sent us a message that he wasn't in a rush. There was no pressure. He was just present, which helped us slow down. Even though the restaurant was hopping, he was able to give us the sense that he had time for us. Now, after he took our order, I turned to Rob and I said, okay, there's a guy who is able to co-regulate. And so when he came back to the table, I told him that. And he was appreciative of me sharing. And then he, in turn, shared just some simple things about his life, which again allowed him to connect with us. Even the language that he used, it was filled with appreciation and gratitude. He spoke really highly of the restaurant, of the other staff members, the food, the customers. He shared how it was an amazing place to work and how it allowed him to support and raise his 3 kids. And then he went on to say it's an honor to have kids and he just loves them and raised them. He shared just enough of himself to create this human connection, to remind us that he's not just a service provider, but he's a person with a life beyond the restaurant. Now, a couple nights later, the restaurant was so good. We returned and we had a different server. It was a woman, and she created a similar experience, actually. She was different. She had her own personality, but there was warmth there. She was friendly. She smiled. She listened. She repeated things back to us to ensure understanding. And again, most importantly, there was a sense of take your time. There's no hurry, which is so regulating to your nervous system. So this is co-regulation in action, when somebody else's regulated system helps regulate our own. When somebody approaches us with calm and open body language, a warm vocal tone, an attentive presence, our nervous system receives the message like all is well, you can relax here. So these interactions create what researchers have called fleeting intimacy, which are kind of these brief experiences that have emotional resonance and meaning to us. They're the feeling good that you get from just being acknowledged, from being part of community, from being truly seen, even if it's just for a moment. So I said earlier that co-regulation is how we initially learn self-regulation. Now, the challenge is if we've never received good examples of co-regulation when we were growing up, maybe our parents weren't able to do that to us. Maybe they struggled with dysregulation. Maybe they suffered with mental health challenges or trauma, or they never learned in their life how to regulate. Maybe they were just inconsistent with their ability to nurture us. And let's be clear, it's not that I'm saying it's all our parents' fault and that they're bad people. I think that we actually all do the best that we can. The reality is, many of our parents didn't have examples of co-regulation either. So we're all kind of struggling. But here's the thing. You can learn how to regulate, co-regulate, how to self-regulate, and we can cultivate connections in our daily lives. We can connect with each other and we can connect with strangers. Now, while many of us shy away from strangers, there's that stranger danger fear that we have. There's actually power to connecting with strangers. As I said earlier, the most fundamental message that we receive when we connect with a stranger is, I see you, you exist, you matter. So we engage in small talk, which can seem trivial, But it is this form of connection, this fleeting intimacy, a brief connection that you have that leaves you feeling a little more human and a little more alive. And you may have noticed that sometimes exchanges with people who are strangers can almost feel safer than opening up to people that we do know. Why is that? Well, because there's no pressure, there's no expectations. You can just be present. I see this in the groups and memberships that I run. It's amazing to see the connections that have happened between members who are strangers or who started to be strangers because it is just very freeing to just be. When we can pause and tune in, we can see people for who they really are, just individuals, other humans, and we share a common humanity. We are not just labels, and we don't just label other people. So, these little split meetings that we can have throughout our life can be like little breaks that we can have in our day, a chance to connect, a chance to help, a chance to just witness somebody else's humanity. So, what can you do to connect more with strangers? Well, firstly, you can do it online and you can do it in person. Now, for many people, doing it online may seem a little bit easier because initially we can stay hidden a bit more. But if you do decide to do something virtually, I really encourage you to jump in, contribute, because it can be really powerful. But what about the in person? Because I know that that's what many of us are craving. Well, first of all, you have to put yourself in an environment where you have the opportunities to meet strangers. So, this may be as simple as going for a walk in an environment where you might bump into other people. It may be going to do some work in a coffee shop. It may be going to the grocery store and walking through the aisles and starting with simple things like eye contact with somebody, and then maybe even upgrading to a smile. You want to be aware of what your own face is doing and what your own body language is, because that is the first point of contact with a stranger. A smile sends a message that I am open to connecting. Now, secondly, what we can do is we can start up a little bit of small talk. Do you ever wonder why talking about the weather is usually a place that we start with many strangers? Well, because it's easy, it's neutral, and it's something that we have in common. So, to first find something easy, neutral, in common with somebody, there are always things, and bring it up. Maybe it's something that is happening around you. Maybe you're noticing a busker on the street, or if it's a holiday time, maybe there's beautiful lights around, or maybe it's something unusual that you see, or you're admiring a beautiful flower, or something that's happening in the sky of a sunset. You see something and you point it out. You're trying to find something neutral that you can bond over. Another thing that you can do is just compliment somebody. Say you're standing in an elevator with a bunch of strangers. I like your shirt. I like your shoes. But you want to make sure that you're genuine. So make sure if you do this that you actually mean it. And what this does is it opens up the doors to make some deliberate interaction. It can really lighten things up. And a plus is people often walk away from you feeling a lightness and a positivity. But again, be genuine. Now, the next one is get a dog. The power of a dog. Have you ever noticed how dog owners always talk to other dog owners? Now, it can be awkward to talk to each other, but it's easy to make small talk between my dog and your dog. We talk about our dogs. We can do the same thing actually with kids. We can make smiles and funny noises and take a genuine interest in a child. Again, we want it to be genuine and we bond over that. So we can use our dogs and use our kids as a bridge to conversing. Okay, so smile, connect over dogs, compliment, but what else? Well, it actually can be beneficial to share, not overshare, but sharing something real, showing your common humanity. If you are in the environment, say you're in a group or you have a few minutes where you're standing in line, have you ever had a conversation with somebody that you meet on the street or on an airplane that you sit beside? You actually can have some beautiful conversations. And when you share, you can be present. They've even found that people feel more comfortable being honest about their inner selves with strangers than they do with friends and family. And people often feel more understood by them. And this isn't because our loved ones don't care. It's because with strangers, we don't assume understanding. We tell the whole story without shortcuts. We explain context. We don't expect them to read our minds. We don't expect them to label or to judge us. When you take the time out of your day to put yourself in environments where you can be exposed to strangers, you're actually making a beautiful interruption in the regular ho-hum of your daily life and theirs. You're creating like unexpected connections that can actually regulate your nervous system and theirs. And in this world where we're so focused on our devices, these small human connections become increasingly important. Now, back in 2013, the University of Chicago, they conducted an experiment where they asked commuters to either sit in silence or to speak with a stranger during their commute. And the results were pretty clear for both introverts and extroverts. They both said they actually enjoyed having a commute where they engaged with a stranger better than when they kept to themselves. So the next time you see your building security guard, you walk by somebody on the street or a person sitting next to you on the train, remember that behind each stranger is an opportunity for connection. There's a world of stories and experiences, and it is how we can interact and fuel our nervous system with these moments of safety and connection. Every interaction that we have with stranger can be like a drop in our safety bucket, and it has the potential to make our world bigger, a little bit kinder, and you never know the connections, what they're going to lead to. When it starts off as a stranger, it can end up being a lifelong relationship. I hope you found this helpful, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Building Resilience podcast. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about managing stress, building resilience, and leading a more purposeful life, then make sure we're connected on Instagram and Facebook at Leah Davidson Life Coaching. You can also subscribe to my weekly newsletter at www.leahdavidsonlifecoaching.com/newsletter. Looking forward to connecting.